at the end of the day, it's about the community. And it's the local community that it's important for the local community to fall in love with a prospect, and it's certainly very important for the company or the prospect to fall in love with the community. Now, today, that recruiting effort looks very different. Before COVID, we were able to travel anywhere and everywhere. We were able to entertain companies here in Tennessee and do a whole lot of in-person recruiting. And I learned 30 or 44, 45 months ago, actually very early, in this world, you guys know this very well, you don't win business over the phone, the internet, the fax, or Zoom. It's about the personal recruiting that happens face to face. So we've survived, and like I said, we've actually had more than a handful of site visits through Zoom. And while they're not perfect, I think they're the next best thing. And I say that to you, 1 out of every 3 projects that we recruit to Tennessee are foreign direct investment companies. You have a border that's been closed from inbound traffic, and certainly a border that does not allow us to exit the country. So for 6.5 months, we had some of the most fantastic projects for companies that were foreign direct investment opportunities looking at Tennessee. And then when the world stopped, I think everybody hit the pause button. But since that time, while we do aggressively recruit, if you're the CEO or the C-suite of a multinational company, you're going to want to go to that community, meet the local officials, talk to the chamber, and just simply get a feel. And you're not going to make those kinds of capital investment decisions until you've done all of that. So 5 or 6 great projects are all the pause button from those international companies. At the same time, I can report since January, our report card reflects about 65 projects that we have incented companies, about 11,500 job commitments, and about $3 billion of private capital investment. And just to highlight a couple of these wins for our state, Alliance Bernstein, we all know this is a Midtown Manhattan financial services company that moved their HQ to Nashville. And they've already announced their 2nd phase in expansion. And what I find so interesting, they were concerned that in Tennessee, we wouldn't be able to provide the human capital talent because financial services is such a specialized industry. But gosh, over half the jobs have been filled by Tennesseans. And so that's a huge win there. Amazon, I'm not talking about the Center for Operations of Excellence, but they've had 2 large e-fulfillment projects announced. One in Memphis, right back at the first part of the year, 1,000 jobs, $200 million of private capital investment. And then last month, Amazon announced a 2nd e-fulfillment center in Mount Juliet here in Middle Tennessee, another 1,000 jobs, $250 million capital investment. And then McKee Foods, 480 jobs, about $500 million capital investment at their HQ down in Collegedale outside of Chattanooga. Tyson Foods, 230 jobs, another $87 million expansion over in Union City. And then last month, Facebook made the decision to invest $800 million in a Gallatin data center that's going to be a greenfield. And while that won't create a whole host of jobs, that is another global brand that we're proud to call, to say that they call Tennessee home. And I love to say what's important about that statement is a lot of these companies, when they're looking to relocate and they're working with their site consultants, it's not a follow the leader, but it really is about, well, what other brands, what other global companies have made the decision to call your state home? And of course, when you look at the technology companies, Facebook being right after Amazon and Google, we have a great story to tell when it comes to those kinds of companies. We continue to recruit on the West Coast. Last month, the most recent win from the West Coast was a company called Moldex Metrics, 220 jobs over in Lebanon. These guys make the N95 mask. They're investing about $25 million. And again, the great news is this is a company that's a family-owned company that's been around about 40 years. So they're not new to the party when it comes to personal protective gear and equipment. And again, coming from California, Smile Direct added another 600 jobs, $34 million capital investment in Colombia. And then over in Kingsport, Domtar made the announcement last month, $300 million investment, 150 new jobs. And they're going to take the old plant in Kingsport, that manufacturing operations, and retool it. So the great news is we continue to have announcements. The old days of live announcements with the governor, and I call it the ticker tape parade, very limited because of COVID. At the same time, Governor Lee has continued to make himself available wherever we ask him to participate, and I think is certainly one of the great chief executive officers, and one of, I would call our state's chief recruiting officer. As far as I'll wrap up with some of the figures about when the pandemic first arrived. A lot of companies were in a free fall, and we received a whole host of inbound calls. What can we at ECD, what can the state do to help these companies that have this enormous disruption? And it's like, driving 60 miles an hour and then hitting the skid brakes and stopping in 3 seconds, because that's about how much time people had to prepare. And the great news is the federal stimulus from the PPP Forgivable Loans program, which I think was enormously successful. 93,000 Tennessee businesses accessed about $8.9 billion. So that was the first major lifeline. As you all know, those are forgivable loans as long as companies kept their employees gainfully employed over an 8-week period. And then the state did step in later with the Tennessee Business Relief Program. About 25,500 small business participated, and those were grants, about $187 million. And then we had some other programs, which I won't go into, but the state, the great news is most all of the state's, I guess all of the state money came through the CARES Act funding from Washington, D.C. So we were grateful for that partnership, and those dollars, I think $2.3 billion of total federal dollars came to the state, and the governor and his task force continue to work toward deploying that capital across the state. So anyway, that's a short update on what's going on at ECD. And our team, like I said, what we want to communicate is we are truly open for business while we do operate independent of each other through AWS. We are hopeful that before too long, the governor will allow us to return to our offices, but we are currently AWS, or we're AWSers through the end of this month. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Carol.
Thanks. Brian, you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was a couple of minutes late getting on. Thank you, Commissioner, for that update. It's nice to hear that projects continue on with announcements, and understand this new COVID situation we're in has put a pause on a few projects, but ECD continues to push forward and make good things happen for our state. Susie, I think you've sent an email, you and Carolyn, out to everybody, or a instant message here, that if anybody has questions for the commissioner, please feel free to write those in, and we'll make sure while he's giving of his time that we can get those answers for you. Anybody have got any questions right now? All right. Well, if hearing none, Commissioner, thank you for your time. Appreciate you making time for us today.
Well, thank you for a great partnership, Brian. I'm going to just hit the mute button, and I'm going to watch and then, of course, it looks like Johnny Bradley will wrap up. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about ECD, sir.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Next, we've got Bradley Jackson that's going to give us an update of what's going on at the Tennessee Chamber. I do want to, since I missed the first couple of minutes, want to welcome everybody, but more importantly, you probably got an email from Susie today, and I want to thank Bradley Jackson for working with the TEDC board and the Tennessee Chamber of coming up with an op-ed of kind of in this crazy political time where we see a lot of rhetoric out there in an election year, try to maybe take unfair shots at one of the institutions that has supported all of us in what we do as a profession in our state. And really want to say thank you, the Tennessee Chamber, of working with us in writing that op-ed that has been published. You all should have that in your inbox to read, but thought it was well done. And so, Bradley, and we'll turn it over to you to talk to us a little bit about what's going on at the Tennessee Chamber.
All right. Thank you, Brian. And as always, we're glad to partner with TEDC. We know you all are really essential to what we do, and our passion and commitment to help with economic development across the state. We believe strongly that when you look at Tennessee and our economic growth, having a strong business climate and the recruitment of business and industry is absolutely essential. And also, you know, the retention and the growth of current industry. So we greatly appreciate the partnership, especially the work that TBA does. And we're always glad to step in whenever we need to. So I'm going to share my screen and hope I don't mess up and put something inappropriate on there. No doubt that one of you probably sent me, but let me try it. I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation quickly. But before I do that, I do want to know we've got Ryan King on here. The Tennessee Chamber, we are about to release our recap of the 2020 legislative session. It was a strange session, to say the least, but overall, the results that the Chamber and the business community were able to have were very strong, very positive. There's a number of key votes that are in there as well that you all can look at. Look at how your legislators voted on key issues. You all's engagement with them whenever you talk to them and communicate to them how they've done. It's very important for us in the work that we do whenever we're down there working with them. So also, this license plate. If you all have not ordered one, please go ahead and place your order. We got to get 1,000 of them. We see no reason why the Chamber and the business community can't get there. Ultimately, the proceeds will go to benefit our foundation and the work that we do there around workforce development. So that said, let's share a screen. All right. You all see? Good. Thumbs up. All right. So just to kick off, want to cover a lot of ground with you all and just go through a number of things. One, on the legislative front, some big things, but also take a step back and let's talk a little bit about Tennessee's economy and some of the things that we're hearing from business leaders, because I think that's very valuable for you all, especially with your existing industry or whether you're looking at new companies. UT recently did a very good survey and took a deep dive on what's the business community thinking? What are their major concerns during this pandemic? So we'll touch on a little bit of that. So first of all, like you all, the Chamber, one thing we did on, March the 12th, whenever I think we all went into shutdown mode, is we knew as an organization, we really had to change a number of our operations. So we moved into total kind of pandemic response. So Carolyn, Susie, the team here has done a great job of shifting to in-person to virtual events. And I know all of us, with what we do, being in front of people is valuable, and it's been difficult on all of us not being able to do that. So it takes us to engage a little bit differently. A number of businesses, whenever this happened, you all know they were extremely concerned about the shutdown and could they operate? Were they essential? So we want to recognize, ECD and Governor Lee for kind of immediately recognizing the definition of what an essential business is, because so many of these, whether they're in the supply chain, if they're, providing medical assistance, or even manufacturing food items. There's so many things out there in our economy that are absolutely essential. So the Chamber, we engaged with that. Immediately also the liability protections, we'll talk about that. We're able to get that through the legislature, and we think that's a very positive thing as you all are out there talking to both your existing industry or even new industry. We're probably one of only about 10 states that actually enacted it in statute here to provide broad-based liability protections. The PPE discussion early on, we were involved with that, trying to help businesses connect, to find availability of that. Seems to have resolved itself. Most everybody now we talk to, they're really not having many problems with that. 2021, we'll take a look, kind of looking forward. Because for us, to be honest, we don't know what really to expect. We don't know about our day on the Hill. We don't know if we're going to be able to talk to legislators, in person. So over here, we're thinking about trying to change some of our operations to go more online, more social media, where we can get to those legislators. Because ultimately, if we're not down there meeting, we have noticed that they're looking a lot more at their social feeds. So we hope to kind of ramp that up. And then other than that, like you all, we're active, we're getting after it. We're just doing it in a different way. And then we'll touch on our 2021, our business policy survey too, and any help we need there. So the session for us, everything was moving along great in April, and then the pandemic hit, actually March, and then the legislature scurried and saw, Tennessee was actually one of the first states in the nation with some confirmed cases. I think it started up in Washington, California, and then boom, Tennessee had one very early. So the legislature, following the guidance of health professionals, said we need to shut down. We need to get out of here. So they passed a budget very quickly. And what they did is they saw a number of concerns on the horizon. When businesses are shutting down, Tennessee's economy is very heavily based on business activity. We estimate up to 70% of all tax collections, whether it's sales and use or franchise and excise, that's flowing into Tennessee's coffers. So it created an immediate concern. So they cut around 350 recurring dollars and around 70 non-recurring dollars. That's in the millions. So it was a substantial cut, and nothing was spared. I believe even Fast Track had to give up $5 million in non-recurring funds. So that really defined. The legislature didn't finish a whole lot of things. They got the budget and they got out here, and then they came back on June the 1st. So and on June the 1st, that's when we dealt with our first kind of really the first defeat of the liability protections. Luckily, the legislature came back into session, thanks to Governor Lee, Lieutenant Governor, our House Speaker, and passed those liability reforms and got that through fast. The undercurrents, it's a tough environment. I think it's very stressful on the members going through this. You have no idea the number of phone calls they get on unemployment, on their constituents pull them into the middle of the mask debate. And so I think it's very stressful for them. And we can see that as we work with them and talk to them, just going through this pandemic. So the chamber, our 2020, when we were in, we had a good year. You all have noticed right to work in Tennessee. You all frequently hear it when you're out there recruiting. That's really one of the hallmarks of Tennessee being a strong pro-business state. The chamber was part of an initiative to move that, where it will get on our amendment, to make a constitutional amendment and permanently embed it. And we hear a lot of concerns that Congress may move to preempt a lot of these state laws. So this would be an effort to permanently embed it here. Marketplace facilitator, the chamber supported that. A lot of these companies that are here support it. They feel like if they're going to have to pay the sales and use tax, really everybody who comes and does business here should as well. So that's also contributed to a lot of sales and use tax growth, we believe, here, and helped to stabilize our economy. Urban soils, that was an environmental issue some of our businesses worked on. Budget, taxes, HR, you all can read our legislative report. There's a lot of issues that came up there. Not as many around economic development this year. We had a few bills that we worked with you all on, but overall, and also worked with ECD on a great partnership. So nothing passed this year substantially negatively impacting economic development, which is very good, because I know in the past few years we've had some serious fights down there in the legislature. So hopefully the dust will settle on this issue. And of course, we'll talk about the safe harbor protections. Let's first talk about these races that we've got in Tennessee. So As we think first top of the ticket, major presidential election, we are expecting substantial turnout in Tennessee. I think it could, we've tried to estimate before, we think it could probably break a number of records, to be honest. Tennessee, also there's a large flow of mail-in ballots as well. Tennessee, we have no reason to expect President Trump will underperform where he was earlier. I think he'll perform right at that, if not maybe a little stronger in Tennessee. We just don't know. A lot of that's going to depend on turnout in the urban areas, which are more, purple, who will turn out to vote for Senator or Vice President Biden. So, but the polling that we see overall in Tennessee are pretty consistent there for the president. We do have a United States Senate seat, an open seat that is retiring Senator Lamar Alexander, a long-time United States Senator, governor here in Tennessee. Hate to see him leave. He's been a strong ally for business in the chamber overall. It appears that Bill Hagerty, from the polling that we see and just the general fundraising numbers, will pretty handily defeat challenger Democrat Markeisha Bradshaw in the general election. We don't see much happening there. Everything seems to be pretty consistent with the polling that we see. In the U.S. House, there is one open seat for those of you up in Northeast Tennessee, and that's the District 1 retiring Phil Rowe. The Diane Harshbarger seems to have secured that. There is a Democrat challenger, but that will be the only congressional seat in Tennessee that we foresee will actually have a new rep there. When we shift gears and talk about the Tennessee legislature, overall, there was not too many disruptions, and we all have to think back. The pandemic hit right in the middle of filing time, so I think we don't see as many kind of overall challengers this year. I think if the pandemic wouldn't hit, it would have been a massive year with a number of Democrat challenges to Republicans. So in our House, 73 of 99 members are Republicans. There's a few major retirements. You'll see Andy Holt, Jim Coley in Memphis, Mark Daniel, Bill Dunn as well. We expect also Timothy Hill, a number of changes too in primary defeats up in the House and Upper East Tennessee area. In addition, I would say that I think the Republicans are watching a number of seats very closely here. They're seeing, like we've seen across the country, some more suburban areas that have been trending stronger toward Democrat voting trends. So we expect there are a number of seats that could be, a little tighter than expected, and even may actually flip back. And I think when we look at those, there's probably 5 to 6 seats that we see there that Republicans are really watching closely. Keep in mind, though, the Republicans have a substantial war chest, especially in the House, that they'll be able to pitch in on a number of these races. I think they're watching overall turnout, but I will say the Coley seat in Memphis, some other seats around that Memphis kind of suburb area are in play. Some of those up in rural West Tennessee as well are expected to be a little bit closer. Even in Murfreesboro, we've heard that some of the races are a little bit closer than they had expected there. When we look at the state Senate, here's those contested primaries. If you all want more details about those, just let us know. Overall, you see the trends in Tennessee, kind of where we've been typically. I will say Tennessee, we look over nationally, and Tennessee tends to come about, we're about 10 to 12 years behind the changes that we see in other states, and that's for a variety of reasons. But we're now that Tennessee has these substantial Republican majorities, I will say when you look at Georgia, when you look at Texas, when you look at North Carolina, states that have been solidly Republican for a number of years are actually turning a lot more purple. They've got some statewide races there that are very competitive. So I think Tennessee, I think the Republicans here, they see these trends and they watch them closely, but I'd say Tennessee's, significantly further behind overall on that. If there's any possibility, the Republicans may, they're going to fight hard to keep the 73 that they've got in the House, and that may not hold for them. Before I move on to the Senate, let me talk a little bit more about the House. So the House, we've seen with a number of primary defeats, we're going to see a different body coming up this next year. You've got House Speaker Cameron Sexton, who's been very clear that he wants to kind of restructure the leadership in the House to where, you know, they're open, they're active elections to those that are going to fill the committee chairs and those that are also going to look at the House leadership positions. So when you look at the House leadership positions, I think for Speaker Pro Temp, Pat Marsh, I believe has put his name in, solid business supporter from Shelbyville, Tennessee. The House Majority Leader currently is William Lamberth. William Lamberth is going to see a challenge this year from Representative Andy Farmer, which is around the Knox area in East Tennessee, Sevierville area, who will challenge him for the majority leadership. In addition, the House Caucus Leader, that's going to be another race where currently it's Jeremy Faison, Upper East Tennessee, who currently holds that. I believe Robin Smith down in Chattanooga is going to challenge him. So you're seeing kind of a House that's where there's a lot of kind of, I guess, structural fights, as you know, as the Speaker now kind of has an open way to lead that House and structure it. He has hinted that he wants to lessen some of the committees there, the overall number of committees, which I think some of us would believe is positive. But we'll just have to see what he's looking at there. In the Senate, there's just one open seat. For those of you out in West Tennessee, Paige Wally won that seat, defeated Jay Templeton. And that is one of actually the largest county or area state Senate seats. When you look at all the others, it carries or, you know, has a number of rural West Tennessee seats or counties out there that covered. Paige Wally wound up winning that seat. So overall in the state Senate, we just don't see many changes. I will say there is a hotly contested seat here in Davidson County. I believe it's the one you see that has the red kind of around it, goes all over. That's Senator Steve Dickerson. He is in a serious fight with, I believe it's Heidi Campbell here, former mayor of Oak Hill. The polling there indicates that is a hotly contested seat. I believe Hillary Clinton even carried that district maybe back at the prior presidential election. So I know the Republicans are spending a lot of resources there on that seat, but otherwise we're just not seeing many changes, nor will we see many, I think, in the leadership structure here in the state Senate. There will be a few committee openings that we'll see, but we'll monitor those. Again, these were the contested primaries. We didn't really see much change there. Bill Powers in District 22 ended up carrying that seat and everything. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Tennessee's economy a little bit. One, we are seeing a lot of underlying strength in Tennessee's economy, and I think that is evident by when you look at Tennessee's tax collection. Certainly right after the pandemic, they dropped off mainly because Tennessee extended businesses their filing deadline on their corporate F&E taxes. So when we look at when the year overall closed up, Tennessee was in a good place. We closed about $400 million total in excess revenue above the estimate on our state sales or state tax collections. Now, keep in mind, the legislature, to be cautious, they went ahead and cut that, $450 million we were talking about earlier. So overall, they mitigated a lot of their exposure. And even when we look at the first month of collections into August, there is a lot of strength out there. Now, the one strange thing we're seeing is there's a lot of shifting consumer preferences. When you look at sales and use tax, there's some really high points and then there's some really low points. And you all can kind of figure out probably what those are. And I believe I have them down here later. I had in here local government updates, but that was really an update on kind of the stimulus funding and where a lot of that has gone. When we talk about the economy, we have to talk about really the pandemic and COVID, or the COVIDs, as a lot of our legislators called it. People had gotten the COVIDs. But when we look at that, Tennessee overall, 195,000 cases. That puts us per capita in the top 10 states nationally. And then when you look at cases, per 100,000, Tennessee also ranks 9th. I know sometimes we see those those numbers. However, it's important to note Tennessee has one of the lowest total death rates at 2,862 when you look at it per capita. So what that really means is that it's younger population in Tennessee that seems to be getting the virus. But overall, that low death rate does show that there are a number of in the population that are taking this serious. They're wearing masks and they're concerned about it. The economic recovery, Commissioner Rolfe talked about, it was $5 billion total that Tennessee got. About 2.3 of it was able to be able to use for various stimulus things. Now, one thing Tennessee has done that I think is very positive for you all recruiting industry is to talk about how they spent around $700 million of that 2.3 to shore up Tennessee's unemployment fund. That fund has been draining down very quickly, especially as we currently have about 150,000 people, utilizing it on unemployment. So by shoring that fund up, it avoids a substantial tax increase on Tennessee businesses that really hit smaller employers the hardest. So Tennessee has been really good there. A number of other states they've not done anything. They've let their unemployment taxes go up, in some cases 200%, and that's a tax increase on businesses that we just don't need right now. So Tennessee's been able to avoid that. We talked a little bit about the revenue growth. Tennessee's coming in solid there. It's interesting to note that whenever we look at a lot of data on this, the economic activity is really driven a lot when you ask people why they choose to do certain things or why they don't. It's their perception of how cases are growing or how rapidly they are. When cases are mitigated and states manage them well, which Tennessee has a good handle on them, it creates underlying confidence in our economy, which is a very good thing. So it's interesting. People really don't look at government restrictions, things like that. They look at the data themselves and make determinations on what they're going to do. Governor Lee initiated a significant mask effort, a $4 million ad campaign. I know you all see those all around, and a lot of you all in your local chambers have been promoting that. That's a good thing for the business community to do because it's all about our economy growing. So we continue to promote the use or wearing of masks. It's non-invasive and it works. So if it can keep our economy up and running, then we should continue to do that. Sales activity, I talked about there's a lot of growth areas and there's a lot of areas that's been hit hard. These are some of the areas that are really increasing, in some cases up to 70% over the prior year. Is building materials. You all know this and you see it. Food stores, and that is retail. They are still staying extremely busy as people continue to kind of eat home and even stock up. Recreational vehicles. I'm sure some of you all out there bought a boat, and that's okay. Just let us ride on it. Yeah, boat dealers, recreational vehicles, liquor stores. Liquor stores are doing very well right now when you look at their year-over-year collections. Sporting goods doing well. Tobacco stores, and of course, catalog and mail order is probably the largest gainer in this, going up over, in some cases, I'd say 100% in increased collections. Now, some of that is due to the marketplace facilitator. The decline in areas, you all probably feel it in your communities. Retail, clothing is down significantly. Eating and drinking venues are down overall. Hotels and lodging have taken a significant hit. Amusement and motion pictures. So when you look at the collections, that's overall in Tennessee, which is a trend very similar across the country. Economic development. Key takeaways, Tennessee, we have a strong, diverse economy, and it's really helped us to maintain our tax collections, our economic growth, and we look forward to further growth here. Governor Lee, I think, has created a very strong sense of consistency where they have a good, solid handle on the cases. So that's something that businesses look at. I know New York, whenever they had such a huge uptick, it impacted their economy significantly. So when the perception is out there and it's strong that Tennessee's managing this pandemic well, then that's good for all of us. Tennessee enacted those comprehensive liability protections, so be sure to tell businesses that. We can send them a lot of data, a lot of different things. The one thing I do want to show is another good statistic that Tennessee has. Tennessee has always really lagged behind on our income per capita, especially when you look at over like the last 10 years. Well, recently, Tennessee, we have now surpassed Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, and North Carolina. So we rank, 36 overall, but when you compare it to other southeastern states, Tennessee was right down there with kind of Mississippi and Alabama. So the good work that you all have done in growing our economy is paying off. That helps a lot. There's some other areas that are not so good. So the good areas are in green. Overall, we have a low tax burden. We have low Tennessee, our total collections and revenue per capita is at 48th, which is really good. Some issues though, our state corporate income tax rate. We are 7th highest in the entire nation in terms of what we collect per capita on our state corporate income tax. So all of our other competing states around us, they're up in the 30s and 40s. So that's something we always have to be aware of here in Tennessee. Overall, our state and local combined sales and use tax rate, we're the highest in the nation when you look at the state component of it and the local. So, and also motor fuel taxes. I put this one as red, but actually Tennessee's in a good spot there. It probably should be green. We rank 30th overall, below, I believe, most of our other southeastern states as well. So a lot of companies out there watch those motor fuel taxes closely. Just economic risks. We talked about this. Is there going to be another stimulus? I mean, Congress, it's been extremely disappointing that I think a lot of us thought that surely they would get their act together and come up with something to be able to pass. And still no answers really out of U.S. Congress. We've got, PPP that's still, it's certainly expired. A lot of companies or small businesses are talking about that. There's state UI assistance. There's a number of other things that really Congress needs to look at if they want to keep this economy moving forward. Tennessee's unemployment fund, we talked about that. The good news there is at one time we were up to about 320,000 total people seeking unemployment. We're down to about 160, 150,000. That keeps dropping every year, but how much more money can Tennessee place in that fund? And then the fall and winter months, I think we're all watching the impact that COVID cases have in your community. It's really impacted by school systems because it affects people's childcare. It affects a number of things if they get sick. So overall, Tennessee, wear your masks. Let's be safe and be responsible because it's all about our economic growth. Of course, the presidential, congressional elections, we can dive into that longer. What a lot of different scenarios may look like because right now, we all see the polling numbers. I think a lot of people generally feel they're probably a little bit tighter than that in some areas, but Congress is still, the United States Senate. There's a number of races there that are trending, then they'll kind of trim back. So we're all watching that closely. So that said, I'm done. And if I do have just a few more seconds, because I'm like John Bradley, I'm a nerd about data and stuff, but this University of Tennessee survey is really good. If you want to know where the business community falls on how they feel about the pandemic, you really ought to look at this, and it breaks it down by East Tennessee, West, and Middle. But when you ask businesses what really is your major concern, it boils down to labor. When you talk about the skill gap that it's really shown itself during this pandemic with a lot of people that have decided to go ahead and retire. So the existing workforce out there, there's still skills gaps that are there. Overall, business leaders feel like our government has handled this really well, and it's created, it's stabilized our economy. When you ask about their future performance, they feel like sales are going to be down, and it's a little concerning. Up to 60% of some of those businesses trend their sales drops anywhere from about 10% to 30%. And those are significant numbers. So there's still a lot of nervousness out there in the economy. Everybody seems to be, just putting their head down and hoping that they can get out of it and weather this storm. Of course, for your smaller businesses, it's a lot more tricky. But again, thank you all for your time. And if y'all ever have any questions, just let us know.
All right, thank you, Bradley. Any questions that we've got for Bradley at all from anybody? Well, Bradley, we appreciate you taking time to give us an update. It has been a very eventful last session, and I expect nothing less of the upcoming session either, of a full contact sport. So appreciate you and what the Tennessee Chamber is doing, and thank you for the partnership with TEDC.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay.
Next, without further ado, we've got Mr. John Bradley that's going to give us an update with TVA. Those of you that don't know John, John is leads the economic development efforts with TVA and is such a big proponent of us as a profession, and cannot think of a better friend to have as we work with TVA and projects. So John, talk a little bit to us about what's going on with TVA today.
Hey, thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it. And Commissioner Rolfe, if you're still on, we truly appreciate your leadership and partnership with the state of Tennessee. It's a lot of fun working projects together. We do appreciate that. And Bradley and Brian, a special shout out to you guys for supporting TVA on that op-ed piece, you know, to support the public power model. So that couldn't have been more timely. I think many of you know that we have 153 local power companies that we sell wholesale power to. Of those 153, 142 of those have signed 20-year contracts, which is a huge deal for TVA. So that's about 90% of our revenue overall. So it's a huge, but we have a few out there that are looking at other suppliers, and that's why preserving this public power model is so important. So we appreciate that, Bradley and Brian, really do. I mean, it took a lot of work for you two to get board approvals to go through that, and it hit the paper this morning. So thanks so much for that. So what I thought I would do is hit on a couple of things. One is just performance. As y'all know, our fiscal year starts October 1. So we're already into 21. But also talk about some of the things that we've done special during this pandemic. Just kind of some programmatic type things from a TVA perspective. So for year 20, together, we've all, and this is the state of Tennessee numbers, together, 45,300 jobs created and retained. And as you know, we also count existing industries that expand and also retention projects. And that created about $5.2 billion of capital investment. So a really strong year for a tough year, quite frankly. And just during the COVID-19, March 1st through September 30th, of that number, 14,500 jobs were created and retained. And of that, about $1.9 billion of capital investment. So even during really tough times, I mean, we should be actually pretty proud of those numbers. You know, if you think about the difference between the last recession, you know, back in 08 and 09, when that recession hit, new projects died, you know, and the only thing that we were seeing were existing industries either merging, acquiring, or consolidating. So this is a little bit different in that we're still working new projects. So it is somewhat of a good sign. And then they were also proud for 15 years in a row, TVA has been named one of the top economic development utilities in the country. And we go up against people like Duke, Georgia Power, Southern Company, stuff like that. So we're pretty proud of that. So some of the programmatic things that we've done, all of y'all are familiar with our investment credit program, our performance grant program. So to date, we've been able to give $3.4 million in credits to about 25 customers. That some of them are end-use customers, some of them are LPCs. TVA's also has what they call a back to business credit. We've been able to give another $3.7 million back to our Tennessee local power customers. We also have some of you may know, we have what we call a comprehensive services program. It's really more of an engineering function. We've been able to give our customers back $3.2 million in that program. We also put together a community care funding program, which was basically matched dollars with our local power companies. You know, it funded, you know, local, you know, United Way campaigns or you know, food banks and things like that. So we were able to leverage some really good dollars at. And then economic development also provided a couple of things to our economic development agencies. One, we increased some funding during this tough time. As you know, we provide funding normally, but we were also able to add additional significant funding when you know, our local economic development agencies are really struggling. You know, I think the commissioner would agree, we can't do this job without our local partners. And we just thought that was so important to make sure that you guys are surviving out there and getting through this tough time. And then also we provided, particularly in our rural areas, some telework grants to our local economic development agencies. And that was in the tune to about $80,000. So serious money going towards some agencies at a really special time that we all needed to kind of pull together. So a couple other things, you know, Commissioner mentioned this, you know, we've changed the way we're doing business, right? Doing a lot of this virtually, flying drones, not doing face-to-face meetings. So we thought it would be really important to keep the education side of the business going. So we had several webinars. One was Navigating the Workforce Housing Challenge. We had a little over 100 attendees, and that was a 2-part webinar series teaching economic developers how to understand housing related data and define innovative ways to meet housing needs in their community. We also put together the Bloomberg Impacts of COVID-19 on the automotive industry. We had a huge participation rate. We had over 200 attendees attend that. Also preparing for a virtual site visit. That was TVA, Economic Development led. We had about 150 attendees participate in that. The consultant perspective, virtual site visit, best practices. We had Global Location Strategies, one of the consultants we've all worked with, presented best practices in choosing the right technology, preparing visits, visuals, addressing workforce virtually, and organizing your team. We had about 130 people attend that. And then finally, we had could the silver tsunami sink your community? And this is more of our business retention and expansion strategy, preparing cities for the uncertain future. Baby boomer owned business transitions, and about 160 people attended that. So we're going to continue to try to do those type things where we can't get face to face. We're going to continue to hold those type of seminars. So we also developed, it was actually pre-COVID that we developed our Workforce Plus program. And that's really a plus up to our performance grant program. So as we're working with clients and they have a workforce development need, we'd like to talk to them about some training opportunities. And this is not to really duplicate what the state and locals are doing. It's just really a fill a void out there that might not be available for funding. And the eligibility requirements is it has to be a competitive project outside of the Valley. It's 2.5 million or 25 new jobs, 2.5 million in capital investment or 25 new jobs. You know, average wages of the county that they're looking in. And, you know, basically it's really trying to provide the company with a talent pipeline. So what we're asking those companies to do to say, hey, you know, if you would like us to fund you, we'd like to see what type of training program you're putting together in order to develop your pipeline. So that's actually, we've actually had 2 applications for that program so far. So good. So far, so good. So also, we developed and implemented our SOC performance grant. SOC is our special opportunity counties. Those are our more distressed counties within TVA. So we will actually put money towards smaller projects, you know, that performance grant cannot cover or investment credit cannot cover. So we work really closely with our rural cabinet on this program. So we're real excited about it. We've actually had several applications for that program as well. And of course, our tech services group, which a lot of the communities take advantage of. As y'all know, we've got 2 certified folks within our tech services group that actually fly drones. And that's really become very handy, particularly during this virtual world we're living in right now with COVID-19. So a couple of key areas we're going to focus on is really in 21 is going to continue to be jobs and CapEx. Of course, that's what we do day to day. We're going to continue to try to put more effort and put more dollars towards our rural incentives with those communities that really do struggle. We're also put together what we call a downturn economy implementation program. We're actually going after some targeted industries that are higher utility users, that are higher electricity users, that will help with revenues for TVA, quite frankly. You know, like data centers and some of those things that work really well for rural strategies as well. You're going to see us continue to be involved in the workforce development support that we continue to offer. And then also co-working space. You know, with a lot of folks teleworking now, you don't necessarily, I mean, I would expect that we're never going to go back to the normal. You're going to have more teleworking than ever before. You know, as long as they're Tennesseans and they're physically located here, we're going to try to support that, even if they're working from their house or some type of co-working space. So you'll see some more actually development in that area. One other thing I failed to mention that TVA did with these long-term contracts with our local power companies is we gave our customers, the ones we sell power to, a 3.2% credit. And this could mean significant dollars to some. I mean, millions of dollars per year for these local power companies in savings that they can actually pass along to their customers. In addition to that, we gave them additional $200 million worth of credits this year, which really kind of equates to about a 2.5% decrease in their rates. So one of the things that we feel like TVA can do to really be supportive in the economic development part of this is to keep our rates competitive and have reliable service. Our industrial rates have actually decreased the last 2 years. A lot of our peers can't say that because they've taken on environmental costs that we've paid for years ago. So real excited about that. We think we're in a good place. We think we're very competitive. We appreciate the team effort that goes on with the state of Tennessee and our local communities. We appreciate the partnership there. And with that, that's all I have, and I'm more than happy to take any questions, Brian, if you wish.
All right, thank you, John. Any questions from our group? I really appreciate the efforts that TVA and the state of Tennessee have both done for our small business and our individual shops and making our jobs easier. So thank you all very much for that. Do I have any questions from the group at all? I do want to take a moment to thank everybody. This has been a crazy year as we've tried to work through our events and activities that we had planned and we had to postpone through this year. And it's just been a very odd year, as I think everyone would agree. But we are planning on being back live as long as we are allowed to. As a group, we'll come back together for Day on the Hill. That's still scheduled as of right now. And our intent is to really just pick up from where we left off and just keep with the programming that we had. So with that, we appreciate what our staff has done. Susie and Carolyn have done a great job of keeping us all informed through this. And it's not been easy for the board because it's our nature to want to push through any adversity. And many times we wanted to have events, but just with the situation, we end up just having to postpone. So appreciate everybody's understanding. And like I said, we will, right now we're planning on being back together for Day on the Hill. So if there's nothing else, want to bid everybody a good day. Thank you for making time for us, and we will see you all very soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye.